Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be all about I forgot what it was called, the Club Nebula palette from Kaleidos Makeup. This palette was created in collaboration with Angelica Nyqvuist. I hope I'm not mispronouncing her name. And I kind of screamed internally, well, and a little bit externally. When I saw this palette, I thought it was so pretty. You guys, if you've been watching my channel for quite a while, you'll know that I've kind of been biding my time with Kaleidos makeup. They've come out with many releases that have caught my attention, but nothing that's just made my heart flutter. And this palette does that. You'll also know, if you've been hanging out on my channel lately, that I'm on a bit of an unofficial no-buy. So while I adore this palette and I really think that this is probably going to be my first purchase from Kaleidos Makeup, I'm unfortunately not in the position to purchase it at this moment. So for today's video, I thought it would be fun to create a little dupe palette slash a let's use it in the meantime until I can buy the real palette. I know I'm not the only one who has started their kind of low buy no buy journey. Well, technically I didn't start it in 2021, but I know a lot of you are starting your no buy slash low buys in 2021, and so I wanted to provide some inspiration for creating a workable dupe in the meantime. If this turned out to be a palette that you really love, go ahead and purchase it. And I don't want to do this. I was a little bit hesitant to film this video because I know Angelica is such a beloved creator. I think she's incredible and I really have enjoyed the videos of hers that I've watched, and I don't want to take away from the hard work that she's put into this palette and this color scheme. I think it's incredibly beautiful. I wanted to make this video because I was so incredibly inspired by the color story, but I know that there are a lot of you out there who just aren't in the financial situation like I am to purchase the palette. So that's kind of what today's video is all about. Okay, you guys, I wanted to spend the first little chunk of this video kind of just chatting about the palette. I think this color story is so fun. I actually love that it's a little bit more cool toned and more like colorful cool tone, just not like cool tone neutral, because that's really up my alley right now. I'm obsessed with that like top blue and green row. I think it's so pretty, and the purples in this palette, oh my goodness, knocking my socks off. I do also appreciate there are a couple of warm tones kind of thrown in on that bottom row because that's really where my comfort zone is at, and I feel like having those in there just like makes this palette a little bit more approachable for me. Overall, I'm just really obsessed. I think it's gorgeous. I love the theme of it. I just love it. The only thing I don't love is that the packaging, I think, is that like really chunky packaging that the Kaleidos Makeup Escape Pod palette was. I think, I don't have the palette, so I don't actually know, but I think it was like this thick. It's a bit of a thicker palette, but for this color story, I think it's absolutely worth it. I was racking my brain trying to come up with some palettes in my collection that I thought were similar, but I really couldn't come up with any, which is abnormal because I have a lot of makeup, you guys. I feel like it's just a very diverse palette. Like I could look at each row and maybe pick out palettes based on that, but overall there's nothing that I have in my collection that's super similar. The only thing that came to mind that I don't own is the new Kaleido Cosmetics It's Freaking Bats palette, which was created in collaboration with Dupe. Another seriously gorgeous palette, another one that's on my wish list that I would love to try one day. But other than that, I feel like this palette really just stands on its own, and I think it's so beautiful. Here's my little dupe palette, you guys. I filmed my last couple kind of single shadow videos in that overhead style, but based on the views, you guys aren't really loving that style. So if you don't love that style, I won't be offended. Leave me your feedback down below in the comments. I'm totally okay with that. Or if you would prefer me to do kind of more like overhead intros and discussion, and then like maybe just short interspersed clips of that overhead style, again, I'd love some feedback. I love chatting with you guys in the comments. But here is what the palette looks like. I did create it off camera for you guys, and I'm really happy with this. I don't feel like it's an exact dupe. There are definitely some shades that I feel like are way off, like especially this green right here. In the palette, it's more of a lime green, and in my palette, or in my singles collection, I don't have a matte lime green. And this purple shade right here, this is the closest thing I had in my singles like tonally, but it's still really off, and that's actually a matte shadow in the Club Nebula palette. And I feel like maybe the orangey shades right here are a little bit off in tone, but this was the best that I could do with what I was working with, and I'm really excited to draw some inspiration from the gorgeous looks I know are going to come out of the Club Nebula palette, and I hope that you guys are excited to dive into this palette with me. So let's hop over to that overhead style and we'll get into some swatches. Alright guys, here is my little dupe palette for the Club Nebula palette from Kaleidos Makeup and Angelica Nyqvuist. and I thought we would do some close-up swatches. So kicking it off, we're going to start off with Cliona Reflectance. This is one of their stained glass shadows. I believe it's one of the what are these called, iridescent multichromes. Really pretty. This is like a light mint with a beautiful pink shift. I thought this one was super duper similar to the one in the Kaleidos palette based on the swatches that I saw. Really pretty. That pink shift is like nearly impossible to capture on camera, so I'm sorry if you guys can't see it. Next up we have Terra Moon's Azure Skies. This is a beautiful vibrant matte blue shadow. I did a whole video on my Terra Moon's neon mattes where I swatched all of them. If you guys are interested in that, I will link it down below. I have a couple of them featured in this palette, but isn't that just so gorgeous? Next up we have another matte from Terra Moon's. This one is called Just a Phase. This one is really off from the one that's in the Club Nebula palette. That one is much more of a lime green, but this was the only like light matte green that I had in my collection. Well, it's not the only light matte green I have in my collection, but I feel like it was closest even if the tone was really off. Okay, next up we have ColourPop Bring It. This is a matte from their Chasing Rainbows palette. I depotted it several years ago and I've loved using these shadows as singles. It's a beautiful matte teal shadow. There's something about this shade that I just absolutely adore whenever I put it in a palette or whenever I find it in other palettes. I just think it's so pretty. And then we have Sydney Grace hashtag It's a Boy. This is a classic matte navy, of course, just like all of Sydney Grace's other matte shadows. It's beautiful even if it doesn't swatch super well on the arm. Alright you guys, moving on to the second row, I'm going to kick it off with Terra Moon's X-Ray. Oh, can we talk about how beautiful this shadow is? This is one of those glittery metallic shadows that's a little bit chunkier, but the payoff is like just stunning. Again, I feel like this one is super similar to the one in the palette. It has, I feel like maybe this one has a little bit more of a blue reflex, so it might actually be better for the shadow that's in the place of Terra Moon's Snow Globe, but we're just going to keep it where it's at right now. This has a really beautiful bluey purple reflect, and as you guys can probably tell, it has a very sheer base. Next up, we have Sydney Grace Laughter. This one is probably not going to swatch very well because it's a lighter matte from Sydney Grace, but it's a beautiful light, like taupey mauve transition. I think the one in the Club Nebula palette is a little bit more like neutral versus mauve, but this is what I had in my collection, so I threw it in, and of course it's not swatching well. But I promise these perform so effortlessly on the eyes. They're just not great for swatching. Next up we have a like brand spanking new shadow to my collection. It's from Kaleido Cosmetics and it's called Draco. It's part of their Star Chasers collection. You guys have no idea how excited I was to just throw this shadow in this palette. It's gorgeous. These are slightly sheer, very sparkly shadows. I mean, look at that shine. This one's definitely more of a duochrome. I feel like on camera it's coming off very like teal green, but it does shift to more of like a blue. But I don't know if that's going to show up on camera. Okay, next up we have another matte from Terra Moon's. This is Terra Moon's Atlantis. Beautiful. This kind of reminds me of like a deep periwinkle. Gorgeous matte. One of my favorites out of that Terra Moon's matte bundle that I mentioned earlier. And then this shade from Sydney Grace is called Flannel. Is very different from what's in the Club Nebula palette. It's shimmery for one, and two, it's kind of the wrong tone. I needed like a cool toned purple matte, but apparently I don't have that in my singles collection, so this was the closest thing I had, and I just decided to throw it in here and see if I could make it work. Okay, you guys, moving into the third row, we're kicking it off with Terra Moon's Europa. Again, this is a very similar texture as Terra Moon's X-Ray. This is a like sheer shadow with mostly just like a warm pink reflect. So pretty. Gorgeous inner corner shadow, gorgeous topper shadow. Then we have Terra Moon's Snow Globe. Oh my gosh, you guys, I love this shadow so much. If you guys love their iridescent chameleons but like you can't handle the price tag, this is a wonderful alternative. It's nowhere near as intense, but it kind of gives you that vibe. This has pink shifts, blue shifts, green shifts. Oh, it's just so pretty. I was really excited especially to see like these kind of shades, or at least based on the swatches, that's what the shades kind of remind me of, in the Kaleidos makeup palette, because A, I feel like those are probably kind of similar to their highlighters and those are gorgeous, but B, I think it just adds so much value to a palette because they're so incredibly versatile. Okay, next up we have Lethal Cosmetics Cycle. This is a beautiful, like, I always describe this as like a cantaloupe orange. It's soft, much like Lethal Cosmetics formula, and makes a really pretty transition shadow. Next up we have Terra Moon's Cosmic Blaze. I feel like this is just a tad too bright and a little bit too neon, but it was the closest thing I had in my collection, so I just threw it in the palette. Again, really pretty. And then finally we have the shade Sangre, also from Terra Moon's. This is not one of their neon mattes, it's from their El Barrio palette, and I just think it's beautiful. It's a bit of a drier shadow, but it's absolutely stunning. So here is my Club Nebula dupe palette for you guys. I will pop some swatches on the screen right here that are from the actual palette, so you guys can kind of compare and contrast, and definitely let me know what you think of my dupe palette in the comments down below. Alright you guys, it is comparison time. Let's hold the palettes up next to each other. What do you guys think? How did I do with my dupe? I know it's not exactly the same, but I think it's enough to tide me over until I can purchase the real deal. Let me know down in the comments down below what you guys think of this palette. Are you drooling over it? Are you obsessed with it? Are you going to purchase it? Have you tried Kaleidos makeup in the past? Is it worth all the hype? I want to know all your thoughts down below. And before you go, I would really appreciate it if you guys like this video and subscribe to my channel. If I were to sum up all the videos on my channel, I feel like it would be that I am that girl that I'm sure we're in similar situations, that bought all this makeup and I'm just kind of like, well, what do I do with it? So my channel is kind of me documenting my journey through that, kind of learning how to shop a little bit smarter and really enjoy the massive makeup collection that I have. But I think that's enough blabbering on for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Another congratulations to Angelica for this incredible palette and this incredible collab. It's literally breathtaking and so inspiring, and I'm just so happy for her. But that's it for me today, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!